Welcome to the Saturn V Rocketdyne F1 engine build. I'm going to be walking through the assembly for your kit today. Please reference the pictures online. I do have a live model here that I like to reference when I put together this each one of these motors. I've done this about 50-60 times, but I still like to look at that. Keep it over on the left side. The components that are included in your kit: this is a thrust chamber bell, pretty straightforward. Thrust chamber exhaust manifold, top of the thrust chamber. Please note the orientation. There's three, almost like a diamond on each side, and then a flat side. We'll reference that later. And then inside there you can see the very extremely detailed nozzle. This is your turbine with little brackets for your finishing brackets that will actually attach to the motor. LOX dome. Several of the fuel lines. Another really key note here is there's a top and the bottom. We'll take a look at that when we assemble these together. One side has, looks like little holes in it, the other side is flat. You have these nozzle adjusters. There's two per engine. And then this is the thrust chamber tank coupler. So this basically is going to attach the entire motor to the base. Some parts that are utilized for the assembly. And then this here is the inside coupler mount with a ring that holds everything together. So nothing is actually glued to the base. And these are little thrust chamber, they refer to them as engine supports. It is a left side and a right side as you assemble. And then these little guys here are specifically for the center engine. They're a little bit of a smaller looking mount, but that's going to actually be, these are located right there on the model. In addition to that, I've got, these are very important. All of these are little jigs that I've built to put the motor together. It's extremely important to utilize these. If it's off by even a half of a millimeter, some of the components will not fit correctly. So please utilize these. It's very important. The finished base with the vinyl graphic attached, pretty straightforward. And then just some of my favorites here. This is the Bob Smith Industries Super Gold Plus. It's a CAA glue. Works incredibly well, and it also works really well with this Zap CA accelerator. All this does is basically locks in your glue when you have a part that you want to have just dry very quickly. Use this. Be very careful because it dries very quickly. Once it's on there, it doesn't come off. I use this little applicator to do some fine touches there. Let's utilize some of these little sponge, almost like a Q-tip. Little fine tooth ones here. And here and there I'll use just these are from Amazon, very cheap. They're about 10 bucks for like 20 different brushes. But I'll use this to put on some of the glue in some areas. Wear gloves. If you don't wear gloves, it's a mess. And then I use these little plates to put the glue in as I do the assembly. So I think that's everything, and we'll get started. Alright, we'll start with the thrust chamber and the exhaust manifold. So I have this little jig. What I typically do is very lightly glue the inside. You don't have to put a lot of glue on. A little bit less around the outer ring. Put a little bit more right here because that seems like it's a spot that it actually sits against pretty well. Take that and I insert it. Fits perfectly in there. Then no particular way here, you just take your thrust chamber and sit it down on that. I typically have a can of paint I put on top of this, and I'll get that in a second and let that dry. Okay, so next step, as you can see, I have my handy dandy Duplicolor primer filler. Love this stuff, works extremely well. You don't have to put a lot on. I actually like it over most of the craft primers. And so next step, you're going to grab the next jig here. It's extremely detailed in there, so please note that each one of these pieces goes in a certain way. So this is your turbine here. What you're going to do here is you're going to dabble a little bit of glue inside here. You don't need a lot, as you can see. And then this little peg, it's extremely important that you push that in all the way, and that becomes one, just like that. And you take this, insert it right into the bottom, just like that. Alright, next step here, we're going to take the top of the thrust chamber, and I'm going to dabble just a little bit of glue right around the ring here. Just a bit, you don't need a lot. And then this piece, this is going to go in a specific way. So this roundish part here is going to face the turbine, and you're just going to pop it in there, just like that. Just be careful not to get glue anywhere else. Alright, next you're going to take a bit of glue and you're going to lightly coat the outside of that piece that we put in earlier. Remember, we still have glue around that base there. So now this is one of the fuel line sets, and you can see the little hole here for this part of the fuel line, the lower U. And this piece goes right in over top, snaps there, and it fits snugly right around that center piece. Just make sure that everything's nice and tight on there. Again, you don't need a lot of glue. Alright, so that's still set. I'm going to put a little bit more glue around the top of this here as the next piece goes on. Alright, so this is very important. Remember I said piece here with these little dotted grooves, that's gonna go up. It's very important for the fit here. So all this is gonna do is go down and that fits very nicely to the top. Alright, so this is where I'll take just a little bit of that accelerator, put it on a plate, and I'm going to just dab just 1, 2, 3 dabs there. That holds that whole thing in place. Now that's completely locked in. Don't get the accelerator and the glue together. Don't even put them on the same plate. It's the fumes from the accelerator that actually causes this whole thing to congeal. Alright, so next we're going to put some glue on the top of this dome. And then I'm going to just hit these little spots right here with some glue. Then this is your LOX dome here. That is just going to go right in between those two fuel lines. Pretty straightforward. Let that rest for a minute. Okay, so let that rest for a second. I will take a little bit of that accelerator and dab this part here. Once I do that, that is locked in. Next part here is going to be that tank coupler. No particular way that needs to go on either way. So I grab some little bit of glue here. I'm going to very lightly put some glue around this ring. Can't stress, very lightly. There will be something that will actually hold that piece in place, so this is just a little bit of insurance. And then this piece here slides right down, and hold it there for a second. And all of this then is perfectly lined up. Again, imperative that this is lined up, or else the engine will not go back to, or will not go together when you start to do the rest of the assembly. Alright, so next is this locking pin. This is something I designed a while back to actually really hold that into place, because there was never something there, and all it was held together with was just a little bit of glue on that ring. So I'm going to get some glue here, and I'm just going to apply it around that center area, and I am also going to put a little bit down inside the hole where that pin will go, so it locks into place. And it's really just a matter of this. Sometimes I use pliers, but that would mean I'd have to go to the other room. I don't feel like doing that. So you press down, you heard it kind of snap into place. Sometimes it snaps, sometimes it just sits there. But for the most part, that's it. That locks everything into place on that part of the engine. Alright, next, I developed this little fuel line. This is just a custom design. This helps fill the gap when all of this goes together. You can see it right there. It's very important that this top part here goes up and this part goes down. And all you're going to do is put a little bit of glue inside there. You don't have to go overboard with this, because this is something you're going to see if you put too much glue on. And then this is just going to go right over the top there. And that snaps into place. Sometimes it snaps, sometimes it just goes right on. You want to make sure that this is perfectly perpendicular with the rest of the base here. And now by this time, I feel really good about the way everything's coming together. I'll just do a little bit of accelerator along the edges there, just to make sure that's all set. Alright, so that part is completely done and can be put off to the side. Alright, so now I've let this sit for about 10 minutes just to make sure it dries. You can start pushing from the bottom, just being careful it goes out straight. And you could kind of encourage it along up top here. And it comes out, and this is your finished assembly. Now you're done with this jig here. That goes over there. So basically, this is a completed top portion of the F1 rocket motor. Put her out of there. And that can go and sit over there. What I typically do is I'll assemble all 5 of these before I mount them to the main thrust body. Alright, so this is when it gets a little bit interesting. I'm going to put a little bit more glue here. So we're going to add the fine detail parts. Remember, I said here earlier that these are very important pieces. There's a left and a right. I've already associated what the left and right is. How you figure that out is you put this on here like this, and then it should line up perfectly with the thrust chamber top. This is why it's so important to use the jigs, because if this is off by even a hair, these are off, and then when it goes on to the top of the thrust chamber, everything is askew. So we're going to dabble on just a little bit of glue there. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And this is when I'll get the accelerator ready, because I do need accelerator for this part of it. Alright, so this actually fits on here nicely, almost like a real joint. And then just put this into place. Grab one of my little swabs. And make sure that it's perfectly even with the bottom of the thrust chamber. I take another swab, some of that accelerator, and literally just touch it. And then down here, that's it. And that thing is on there for life. Alright, do the other side. Not a lot, you just need a little bit of glue. This thing goes right out of there. Swing it around. Just like that. Nudge it into place. A little bit of accelerator. There. And you got to make sure it's perfectly set, perfectly flat. Don't go anywhere near it with accelerator unless it is where you want it. And that's it. Both braces are attached. They ain't going anywhere. Alright, so next I am going to put the nozzle adjusters on. One goes on each side. Now note that these go on in a particular way. So this goes on, it goes on like this. So basically the opening faces down. And all I do with this is I dab each end into the glue, and apply it. to just slightly soak some of that up. Such. Alright, I feel good about that. Then I'm going to take a little bit of accelerator. I am just going to barely glaze this, touch it. Put too much on here and it could turn into a bit of a mess. So all it does is it locks that in a bit. And I will do the same thing on the other side. That went on very nice. I will dab this one to be very particular. Soak up any extra glue. And then I'm going to very softly hit this with some accelerator. Again, you don't need the accelerator. It just accelerates the build a little bit. You got to be careful though, because if you put it on wrong, it will actually kind of freeze the part out of place. So that is a completed top, and I'll put that just like that. All right, gave that about 5 minutes to dry. Again, you can see the very detailed inside of that thrust chamber. That's the upper part of the thrust chamber. This part here you're never going to see inside there. That's going to be covered with the exhaust manifold. Just take a once over just to make sure everything looks good, straight. Put that down. And then I could bring this back over. And again, this literally pops right out. If you don't use the jig, and this is not perfect all the way around, when you try to put this on top of that, it doesn't line up and you have a mess. So right now you're getting ready to marry these two pieces together, and the key here is this black. Looks like a very, very tall cone. This becomes incredibly valuable because what you're going to do here, move that out of the way. So you're going to put the bell like that over the top. I'll show you how I'm going to glue this in a second, but then basically this is what's going to keep everything perfectly in line so it doesn't shift, because if this is off, it kind of looks funny. And what your goal is when you look through the bottom of this, is that you want to see this thrust chamber top be very clear. It'll be difficult to see there, but you want to have it on there straight. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll put just enough of glue around the perimeter here. This is where these little like cotton swabs kind of come in handy. I'll include those in the kit. Alright, so just enough there. And then I'm going to do the same. This here, you can go a little bit thicker, but just keep it around the top. This is where that top part glues onto place. You're going to get most of your strength though from that area that I just placed the glue on. It doesn't do any good putting glue up here, even though I will, because none of that's going to actually be attached. Alright, so I got both pieces here. This is where the cone comes into play. Don't worry about it getting stuck to the cone. what I'll do here is very nicely attach. I'll take a look around just to make sure everything is just right. Don't like the amount of glue that came out of there, so I'll wipe some of that off. It's very important for this to be on there straight. And then what I'll do, oops, sorry. I'll do a little bit of a twist, and that comes out. Now what I would normally do is lift this above my head to make sure everything looks good. I also have my handy dandy goggles here with a light on it, so I'll use that in a second. But I want to make sure that everything is perfectly on straight, which is what I'm going to do now. Alright, so I waited 5 minutes. I put a little bit of accelerator on there just so I could do this. What you're looking for is a perfect seam between the top and the bottom. I'll shine some light in there to kind of show you what I mean by that. You can't see any ridges or anything that's off, so this came together perfectly. Put that down. Now I'm done with this jig. I'm done with this one. The only parts I have remaining are these center braces, lock pin, ring, and alright, you're 99% complete here. So at this point in time, you want to have all 5 of your engines completely finished, glued. Leave it, I'd say, an hour to dry. And then you're going to take your center here, and these parts pop right through. Just like that. Now remember, you're not gluing these, so they hold in there just with friction. You can take this centering ring. Technique here is just to hold that in place like that. And then going to take this little pin here, pop that in the center. I always recommend, highly recommend, doing the center engine first. It's then easier to work around the perimeter. Once that's complete, okay, so you're in your final stages now. Basically your finished rocket motor. Just going to be careful here as you put this on. But what I usually do is I hold it by the tin coupler, and you got to line up the hole there, and that's got to line up. And sometimes it shoots the pin out the bottom. No big deal. Let's put that back together here. That goes in just like that. And then I just do one more time here to snap it into place. And that is a finished rocket motor attached to the base. For the center engine specifically, we do have these little braces that basically attach oh so eloquently. Just like that. And I do not glue those to the base. All I do is I put a little bit of glue on each of the tips, like that. They fit perfectly, nice and flat. Once they're nice and flat, then I'll put a little bit of glue here, a little bit of glue there. We're talking literally a dab. And another dab. And that's it. Those center braces are only applicable for the center engine, which is why we call them center braces, because in the real rocket, what this is made for is for a Apogee Saturn V 1/70th scale rocket. Those would go clear off the side here. So this here is just to kind of finish off your center. You can see here everything is nice and detailed, fits perfectly. Obviously when this is painted, it's a lot easier painting it before you put it together. It will look incredible. You can see again in the center here, this nozzle. Once you have all 5 of the rockets on there, basically you could put it down straight, and all 5 of the thrust chambers should fit firmly against your table, your work table, and then all of the top parts here should be perfectly straight. And then this whole entire unit goes right inside the top or the bottom, the aft section of the Saturn V rocket. You can see here how cool that looks with all 5 completely built out. And that will conclude. So the whole point of this video is just to make sure you have success. Without these jigs that are included in the kit, I can guarantee you this will not come out perfect just like that. So just make sure you watch this video, use the jigs, and thank you again for your purchase. Feel free to reach out directly and messaging, and I will be happy to get back to you. Thank you very much.